of the bill, which proposes to amend Article 89, limitation of electoral units, to increase the number of constituencies from the current 290 constituencies to 360 constituencies. This is to facilitate attainment of fair representation in the National Assembly and to actualize the aspiration of the equality of the vote principle, especially in the current underrepresented electoral areas. The bill also seeks to amend a clause 11 that proposes to amend Article 90, that is the allocation of party list seats, to promote the principle of equality of the vote and entrench ideals of a transparent electoral process. The proposed amendment provides the candidate to be nominated from a party list for seats in the National Assembly. County assemblies shall be allocated on the basis of the total votes received by their political party. As opposed to the current practice where such allocation is based on seats won by a political party. The bill also seeks to amend Chapter 10 of the Constitution the judiciary to provide for more transparency in the judicial processes. Proposed amendments provide for the finality of the decisions of Court of Appeal in petitions concerning an election, limits the tenure of the President of the Court of Appeal and High Court to 5 years. The amendments further provide for the tenure of the Deputy Chief Justice. There is some activity at the entrance of the Senate. And the Speaker of the Senate, Kenneth Lusaka, has just entered the chambers. I will now hand you over to the live broadcasting. This is a live broadcast in partnership of Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. Welcome. My name is Kamcha Ninza.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings us your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, communications from the chair. Order number 2, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, second reading.
The Senate Chair Mogeni had a balance of 20 minutes. So, yeah. The chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you were adjourning yesterday, a point of order was raised by a senator for Muranga, Senator Kangata, on what is contained in page 97 and page 98 of the report that has been tabled before the floor. Mr. Speaker, in my brief life, I always like speaking the truth and being very candid. And what is contained in this report is nothing other than the truth and the whole truth. Mr. Speaker, when we retreated as the joint committees of the two houses, as you can see at page 97 and page 98, we did call for the bills that were tabled before the respective houses. And Mr. Speaker, what the remarks that you can see in page 97 is the anomalies that were picked on the two bills, the one that was tabled before the National Assembly and the one that was tabled before the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, Senator Kangata was a member of our committee, and he sat as we deliberated on this issue. And Mr. Speaker, what we have, the observations we have made to the House is that there were some differences on some clauses on the bills that were the bill that was read in the National Assembly and the bill that was read in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, regarding sub-clause 3B, the bill that was read in the National Assembly was amending Article 97, sub-Article 2. The bill that was read before the Senate was amending Article 97, sub-Article 3. So clearly, Mr. Speaker, we did make an observation that there were differences in terms of what was being amended on the bill that was read in the National Assembly and the one that was read before the Senate. Regarding clause 48, Mr. Speaker, of the bill, we made an observation, Mr. Speaker, that whereas the bill was amending Article 188, on the marginal notes, reference was made to Article 189. And finally, Mr. Speaker, we did make an observation that in the second schedule of the bill, Section 1, subsection 1, the bill that was read before the National Assembly was amending Article 89, sub-Article 7. The bill that was read before the Senate was amending Article 87, sub-Article 7. So, Mr. Speaker, plainly, and I hope members have read this report, what we are telling the House is that the bill that was read before the Senate has some errors on the face of the record. And we have made a proposal, Mr. Speaker, that this House, and that is at page 65, this House should take legislative action to correct the errors of form that appear on the bill. So what we are saying, Mr. Speaker, is that the person who has moved this bill, that's the majority leader, has an option, Mr. Speaker, of moving an amendment to correct the error of form. And if you read the report, Mr. Speaker,
let's consult in low tones, you know, it's raising a very important matter. Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, if you read this report, we had two experts, Mr. Speaker, Professor Kamiri Mbote and Dr. Collins Odote. And they did point out, Mr. Speaker, that if we identify an error of form, not an error of substance which changes the wishes of the promoters of the bill, we can make steps to amend the bill to correct those errors. Mr. Speaker, I want to state that I'm not the author of the errors that appear in this bill. I'm not the author. And I've seen debates on social media that there were two bills. Whether there were two bills or one bill, I don't know. The only business that we had to undertake as a committee is to scrutinize each clause of the bill, make observation, and report back to the House. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that even His Excellency the President and the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the owner of the handshake, they are not going to kill any of us if we correct this mistake on this bill. Nobody is going to say we have committed a mistake by correcting this error. And Mr. Speaker, I want this House to note that the bill that is being considered at the National Assembly does not have these errors. So don't look at what is happening on the other side. The error on this bill refers to the bill that was read before the Senate. So the task of seeing how to correct those errors is only with this House. And Mr. Speaker, we have proposed that the leadership, that is the move of this bill, takes steps to correct that error. How will we look to the Kenyan people, Mr. Speaker, if we consider a bill that has got these typing errors and we fail in our duty as members of the Senate in correcting these simple errors? And then you send a bill to the people that has got these glaring errors. Mr. Speaker, I want to persuade the House that this is an error that does not change the substance of the bill. So we're not changing the intention of the promoters. We're just doing an amendment that will correct errors that appear on the face of the bill that was read before us. So, Mr. Speaker, the next point I was making yesterday was regarding the clauses on the judiciary. And Mr. Speaker, some people did not get the point I was making. Mr. Speaker, if you read Article 172 of the current Constitution, the Judicial Service Commission still retains the power of considering complaints that are made against judges. And I want to read what is in Article 172C. It says that the function of the JSC will be to receive complaints against judges, to investigate and remove from office or otherwise discipline registrars, magistrates, and other staff in a manner prescribed by an act of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the current position is that you cannot suspend a judge of the High Court, Court of Appeal, or the Supreme Court before Judicial Service Commission has recommended to the President the setting up of a tribunal to look into the conduct of a judge of a superior court. Now, the clause that that the committee has an issue with is what is in clause 43, Mr. Speaker, whereby it is now proposed that just by the mere receiving of a complaint, before that complaint is looked at and a determination made that a tribunal should be formed to look into the conduct of the judges, Judicial Service Commission can now suspend a judge. And then later on even say we have looked at the complaint and we have found it unmerited and you are free to go back and perform the functions of your office. What we are saying as a committee, Mr. Speaker, is that this will be a big clawback on the independence of the judiciary. It will create a lot of fear among judges, and we are proposing that the prevailing situation where judges are suspended only after a recommendation has been made to form a tribunal should remain. as it is. That's why we have termed that particular amendment to the Constitution as being unconstitutional. But Mr. Speaker, the other clause that we looked at was clause 203. Now, Mr. Speaker, on this particular one, there is a proposed amendment to this Constitution in clause 50, Mr. Speaker, where there is a new clause, that is clause N, and I could read that clause to the House, which reads, to ensure that the average amount of money allocated per person to account with the highest allocation does not exceed 3 times the average amount per person allocated to account with the lowest allocation. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the findings of the committee, and this is at page 166 of our report, Mr. Speaker, we have analyzed this provision vis-a-vis clause Article 217 of the Constitution, which provides that in every 5 years, the Senate will come up with a resolution to determine the basis for allocating money among counties. And Mr. Speaker, we had a simulation that was done to us by the Parliamentary Budget Office. And Mr. Speaker, if we were to apply that new clause, 203N, there are a number of counties that will automatically be disadvantaged. And a county like Tana River will immediately lose 2.3 billion if that clause was to take effect. A county like Samburu will lose 1.2 billion. A county like Marsabit will lose 1.2 billion. A county like Isiolo will lose 1.1 billion. Lamu will lose 435. No, Turkana will lose 435 billion. Taita Taveta will lose 368 million. So this is a matter that you may not see this debate being vibrant in the National Assembly, because this is a matter that is handled almost exclusively by the Senate. It's us who understand that our role really is to defend county governments and the people who reside in those counties. So when we look at all these factors, Mr. Speaker, and considering the fact that the last resolution that was passed by this House stated very clearly that no county should be allowed to lose money, we made a conclusion, Mr. Speaker, that this proposed Article 203N will be in clear conflict with the provisions of Article 217 of the Constitution. And we said, Mr. Speaker, that should this bill pass, then the Executive and Parliament will again be called upon to put in place mechanisms that will ensure that no counties are disadvantaged. So we made a conclusion that that article, in our opinion, is problematic, is undesirable, and that it will interfere with the provisions of Article 203(1) of the Constitution, more so on issues of affirmative action, whereby, Mr. Speaker, some of the counties that have been lagging behind in development must be supported with more resources so that they catch up with other parts of Kenya, and that we must also ensure that there is a stable and predictable allocation of resources to counties. Mr. Speaker, if these counties were to lose this money, it will make their budgeting and financial planning to be almost impossible. Madam Speaker, the other clause that we looked at is clause 230. I mean, the proposed amendments to clause 230, that is the one that deals with salaries and remuneration commission. That is clause 61 of the bill. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the current architecture of that clause, clause 230 of the current Constitution, Article 230 of the current Constitution, Mr. Speaker, the composition of SRC includes one representative of the Parliamentary Service Commission, one representative of the Public Service Commission, 1 representative of Judicial Service Commission, 1 representative of the Teachers Service Commission, the National Police, then the Senate picks 1 representative on behalf of the county governments. And then we have 1 representative representing the trade unions, 1 representative representing employers, and then 1 representative representing the Joint Forum of Professional Bodies. Mr. Speaker, having listened to stakeholders, and I must say that one of the stakeholders was Senator Kasanga, who appeared before us. Mr. Speaker, an issue arose that this proposed amendment to Article 230, where all these bodies will be removed and then replaced with 7 commissioners picked by the President and then vetted only by the National Assembly and not by the Senate. Yet they will set terms for both members of National Assembly and the members of the Senate is highly objectionable. The Speaker, we also looked at how SRC will be able to determine terms for professionals including engineers, quantity surveyors, providing service to county and national and county governments, and we found that this article will most likely be very and therefore, Mr. Speaker, we propose that in future there will be need to look at this particular article. Now, Mr. Speaker, the other point that was very controversial is the second schedule of this proposed bill. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the proposed 70 constituencies, we looked at it from two angles, Madam Mr. Speaker. The first one is the process leading to the creation of the 70 constituencies. And Mr. Speaker, we went through all the BBI reports, and they are contained in this report that was tabled before the House. And Mr. Speaker, we looked at the initial task force. When they released their first reports, there was nowhere where there was a mention of an additional 70 constituencies and the 28 counties that were to benefit. The task force that was appointed to validate the report that was released by the first task force never mentioned these 70 constituencies anywhere. Mr. Speaker, the MP for Bobasi, and I will not refer to the exact page because of time, and the senator for Kitui appeared before the committee during the public hearing, and they took us to task, Mr. Speaker, to show them where the BBI team held public hearings, where Kenyans gave views as to which county should benefit from these 70 constituencies. And Mr. Speaker, we had no answers. Therefore, the process that was followed to allocate these 70 constituencies to 28 counties and leave out 19 does not have answers within BBI. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, we invited 2 critical bodies, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Madam Speaker, when Kenya National Bureau of Statistics appeared before us, they took us through the population data in their possession, and then they took us through the formula of population per constituency that can be used to share out these constituencies. Mr. Speaker, their verdict, and it is here in this report, was that at least 5 counties are unfairly denied constituencies. They identified the county of Kitui, they identified the county of Kisii, they identified the county of Meru, they identified at least in total 5 counties. And Mr. Speaker, they said if we used a proper formula, those counties should have been allocated additional constituencies. So, Mr. Speaker, when we asked IBC whether they were consulted, whether there was any public hearings before these constituencies were allocated to these 28 counties, Mr. Speaker, IEBC appeared before us and stated, and it is in this report, that they were never consulted and they were never involved on the allocation of these 70 constituencies. Now, what is even serious, Mr. Speaker, is that IBC told us that BBI task, Mr. Speaker, I hope you can add me more time. 10 minutes.
No.
Now, Mr. Speaker,
You know, just a minute. You know, when they ask the speaker, not everybody is a speaker. So I hear, I am following. I'll add in 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, those who read the report, they can look at the submissions by the Senator for Kitui at page 147 and the MP for Kisii at 147. So what IBC told us, Mr. Speaker, is that page 147. What IBC told us, Mr. Speaker, is that under the provisions of Article 88, sub-article 4, and Article 89, sub-article 5 and 7, they are the only ones that have the constitutional mandate of delimitation of boundaries, and even then, they told us, Mr. Speaker, that they only do so after they have accorded an opportunity to all Kenyans to make their views on those constituencies. And then they tell us, Mr. Speaker, that even after the exercise has been concluded, invoking the provisions of Article 89(10), they still must give another leeway for any dissatisfied Kenyan to go to court and challenge that process. And the judiciary is given a period of 3 months, to resolve that dispute. So what IBC told us, Mr. Speaker, is that what is provided in this second schedule, which gives them a period of 6 months to undertake that process, is not practically possible. Taking into account all those provisions, Mr. Speaker, and the fact that a schedule cannot purport to amend substantive provisions of the Constitution, the committee arrived at a finding, which is in this report, that the second schedule that proposes to allocate constituencies to 28 counties and leave out 19 is unconstitutional and is of no effect. Mr. Speaker, the question then arises, with all these problems, what must we do as a House, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, when I read the American history, there are two ways you can interpret the Constitution. You can choose to interpret the Constitution in so much a restrictive manner that this House will more or less be moribund. You can also interpret this Constitution in a manner that is so liberal that you're able to achieve two purposes. One, you are able to correct some of the mistakes that this report has pointed out to the House. And number two, you could raise up your hands and say, the Senate, our role is to be paper pushers, we tick boxes, and we say anything which is unconstitutional will be handled by the courts. The choice will be made by us senators. We have drawn the attention of this House, Mr. Speaker, that Article 94, Mr. Speaker, was given to us by the people of Kenya to exercise legislative authority on behalf of the people we represent. If you read Article 1 on the supremacy of the people, Mr. Speaker, it says, I want to read, the supremacy of this all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. So if you invoke Article 94, you are not interfering with the supremacy of the people of Kenya. You are acting in accordance with this Constitution. I want to appeal to the House. Mr. Speaker, to correct the errors that are appearing on this bill before it is released to the people of Kenya for voting. It will be very undesirable, Mr. Speaker, for the National Assembly to pass a bill that has got clauses that are different from what is being passed by this House before we do the corrections. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I move. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kang'ata.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to contribute on this debate. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to raise the following issues. Issue number 1 will be on the constituencies. Issue number 2 will be on the errors appearing in this document, the one before the Senate. Issue number 3 will be the cost of BBI, or this bill once it goes through. Then I'll also discuss the issue of the so-called 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. Then I'll also look at the cost, the effect of an expanded parliament. And then finally, I'll discuss as to whether this House has any powers to amend this document. Mr. Speaker, I start with the first issue concerning the constituency. Mr. Speaker, I will look at it from 2 points of view, technical and a substantive issue. First, let me start with the technical issue concerning that schedule. Mr. Speaker, when you look at schedule in this Constitution of Kenya, there are several schedules. We have schedule number 1, we have schedule number 2, that way. Schedule number 1 on counties, it clearly indicates that schedule has been inserted there pursuant to what article? Like first schedule, it says it is pursuant to Article 6, sub-article 1 of the Constitution. Second schedule, Mr. Speaker, sir, it indicates that it has been inserted there pursuant to Article 9, sub-article 2. That way until the last schedule. One of the problems you find in this proposed schedule, it does not indicate it has been inserted there pursuant to what schedule. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have several schedules in several pieces of legislations, and all schedules must indicate they have been inserted there pursuant to what article, to what section of the substantive law. This one, once ratified by the people of Kenya, it will hang there, and therefore, as correctly advised by other people who appeared before us, it may be a superfluous schedule. But be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me go to the substantive issue concerning the constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, I come from a region called Mount Kenya. We want to say we are very happy that the people of Kwale have been given 2 constituencies. The people of Mombasa, they have been given 3 constituencies. The good people of Kilifi have been given 4, and Bungoma have been given 3. But I'm just wondering, Embu has been given 1, Kirinyaga has been given 1, Muranga has been given 1, Tharaka-Nithi has been given 0, Nyandarua has been given 0, Nyeri has been given 0. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, what did we do to the promoters of BBI, those of us who come from Mount Kenya? How come, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have looked at a place called Nyeri, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, Nyeri has about 500,000 registered voters. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kwale has about 250,000 registered voters. Mr. Speaker, sir, Muranga has 600,000 registered voters. Mr. Speaker, sir, the people of Bungoma, registered voters, they are about 500,000. Some people have argued, no, you should not consider voters, you should consider population as set out by Article 89. Fair enough. Muranga has about 1.1 million inhabitants as per 2019 census. But it has only been given 1 extra constituency. And again, Mr. Speaker, sir, when you look at Article 89 that talks about delimitation of constituencies, nowhere the term counties appears. It's all about constituencies. And therefore, the criteria should not have been counties, it is constituencies. The effect of this bill will mean a constituency like Kieni, which has about 100,000 plus registered voters, with almost 200 and something residents, and with a huge, what we call surface area, will not get an opportunity to get an extra constituency. A place like Gatanga in Muranga County, which has almost 100,000 registered voters and 200,000 registered voters, will not get an opportunity to get an extra constituency because Murang'a has only been given one. What of a place like Nyandarua in Kinangop, a huge, a highly populated constituency? Because Nyandarua has not been allocated a constituency by BBI, Nyandarua people, particularly the people of Kinangop, will not get an opportunity to get an extra constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, on that reason, I am not so sure whether that schedule is fair to the so many counties of Mount Kenya region. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me now go to the errors. This report, as correctly stated by the chair of the committee, the co-chair, we do have two reports, one before the National Assembly, another one before the Senate, and, the bills. We do have two bills, one before the National Assembly, another one before the Senate. Mr. Speaker, sir, those bills are different. The one before the Senate, Mr. Speaker, sir, Clause 13, make reference to an Article 13B, Subarticle 2. The one before Senate makes reference to a proposed Article 13B, Subarticle 3. The second difference between the two bills, the one before the National Assembly, Clause 48. On the marginal note, there is a difference in the reference to Article 188. Mr. Speaker, sir, the third difference between the two bills, we have the second schedule, the one before the Senate, makes reference to paragraph 1 in Article 89, Subarticle 7. The one before the National Assembly makes reference to Article 87, Subarticle 7 in its paragraph 1. Mr. Speaker, sir, those are not simple typographical errors, particularly the one that refers to Article 89, Subarticle 7. Why? We all know one of the most contentious debates in this bill is on the proposed power, on the proposal to take away or to interfere with the powers of the IBC. The error in Article 89, Subarticle 7 clearly touches on Article 89, which refers to powers of the IBC. So I'm wondering, if we are to endorse, which one will go to the referendum, Mr. Speaker, sir? And remember, majority of county assembly, more than 30, they passed the erroneous bill, the one before the Senate. The one which is IBC certified is the one that was passed by majority of the county assembly. And therefore, one can correctly argue this bill does not meet the constitutional requirement as provided in Article 257.
There's a point of order from Senator Kasanga, virtually. Senator Kasanga.
Wondering, yesterday Senator Sakaja did raise a point of order as to whether his report can also be heard before the debate started. Because I think for us, we are following very closely. It would have been good for us to hear the dissenting opinion before the debate actually now fully starts open to the members, because of these issues of what is constitutional or what is unconstitutional. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm begging if it is possible for us to hear the dissenting or the minority report as well. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
First, I don't see Sakaja in the House, and is also part of that report. When he comes, we'll give him his part of the report. Yes, proceed.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me now go to the issue of the cost of BBI. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a report that is part of the annexure of the documents that were presented before the Joint Jailer Committee. That report was prepared by none other by the Parliamentary Budget Office. That report, that is dated 1st of October 2021, indicates that once this BBI passes, Kenyan public will be forced to pay an extra 20 billion Kenya shillings per year to shoulder the burden of BBI. 20 billion shillings. For example, Mr. Speaker, sir, National Assembly will have 453 members. The Senate will have 94 senators, an extra. We shall be having 94 senators. Members of the National Assembly will be 453. And also, you have not even factored nominated members of the National Assembly. You need to pay them salaries. You need to provide for car grants. You need to provide for their running. Mr. Speaker, sir, 20 billion shillings is enough money for us to buy vaccines and ensure each and every Kenyan has a COVID-19 vaccine, Mr. Speaker, sir. And you have not taken into account the cost of doing the referendum, Mr. Speaker, sir. There has been estimates that the referendum will need 14 billion to be conducted. And then you know, once we pass this BBI thing, then there will be an extra 20 billion shilling annually that will be incurred by the Kenyan taxpayer. Mr. Speaker, sir, I now go to 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. The proposed amendment to Article 203A. Mr. Speaker, sir, I was a great proponent of that idea. But when I look at the proposed Article 203 Subarticle A, and it does not speak to what I was fighting for, Mr. Speaker, sir. I thought, Mr. Speaker, sir, this proposal is going to embed the idea that county money should be shared, putting the factor of population, giving it the right weight. But this one is only about of saying each per capita distribution of county resources, you don't give it more than a 3 factor. When I look at Muranga, for instance, when I look at Nyeri, when I look at Nyandarua, when I look at Meru, they will still have amongst the lowest per capita distribution of county resources. And therefore, let no one say that this Article 203 Subarticle A embeds the idea of 1 man, 1 shilling. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me now go to the idea of called the expanded parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, here we have 67 honorable senators. National Assembly, as we speak, has 290 elected members of parliament, plus the women rep, plus 12 elected 12 nominated and nominated members of parliament. We have 47 women reps and 290. But once we expand the Senate, apart from the element of cost, there will be practical problems in this house. Number one, we will have to build new offices to accommodate the new members. Again, two, it will take a long time for each member to get to catch the eye of the speaker. We will be staying here trying to catch the eye of the speaker, and I'm not so sure whether we'll be able to give adequate representation to the people. That problem will be more acute in the National Assembly because you'll be talking of a huge number. Mr. Speaker, sir, there was a time I went to China, I recall, when I was in the National Assembly. I was so surprised that China has 2,000 members of parliament in a population of 1.4 billion Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, when you divide that population vis-a-vis the representation of the Chinese parliamentarians, you will find one member of parliament in China represent about 500,000 persons. But in Kenya, what are we proposing under this proposal? It will be like you are representing 20,000 persons. Surely a poor country like this one. In the US, Mr. Speaker, sir, how many senators do we have? We have 100 members in a population of 300 million. Surely we are proposing now we create or we have 90 94 senators in a population of about 47, 48 million. I think we need to concentrate as a country on issues that bedevil us. Issues of economics. We must ensure that we don't put all our resources in expanding legislature. We must remember we represent people. We should not make this society very heavy on the bureaucratic element of it. And that is what this BBI is proposing. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me now to go to the last issue, which issue is what is the effect of, what is the role of this parliament? Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to read Article 3, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, when I look at Article 3, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, it says, every person has an obligation to respect, uphold, and defend this Constitution. It means the Honorable Senator from Makueni, the minority whip, you have that obligation to defend. Mr. Speaker, sir, it means the Honorable Senator from Kisii, Professor, you have an obligation to defend this Constitution. It means, my friend from Nandi, you have an obligation to defend this Constitution. When we are being told we pass manifestly and clearly unconstitutional amendments, which it is now settled that this bill has unconstitutional amendments, we are breaching Article 3, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have taxed my mind to read Article 257 of the Constitution, the so-called popular amendment of the Constitution. When I look at it, there is no express positive law that prohibits this House from proposing amendments to this bill. I think we have a duty, a legal duty, pursuant to Article 3, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, as read with Article 257, which does not bar this House from doing away with all unconstitutionalities which are contained in this bill, and ensuring we take a document that is constitutional, that is fair to each and every person. Mr. Speaker, sir, the first major review of the Constitution in this country was done in the 1963 Constitution making process. There was Lancaster 1 and Lancaster 2. Why can't we adopt the same method? We have a constitutional conference like they did in 1963. 1969, we did not have a consultative conference for constitutional review. That is why the worst constitution Kenya had is the one of 1969, the one that killed Senate, the one that abolished regional governments, the one that concentrated powers on the executive, because of the whole idea of pushing a constitutional review process without being consultative. Okay. Mr. Speaker,
your time is up. Sorry.
But machine is still talking.
No. Take your seat.
Still functioning.
You don't take your seat. Try to consolidate here. Senator Hamiri, virtual. Yeah, Senator Hamiri. Virtual. Senator Hamiri. Yes, we can hear you. Put on your camera, Senator Hamiri. We can't hear you, Senator Hamiri. You need to increase your volume and... Yes, we can see you now. Yes, sir. Yeah, Senator Murkomenada. Yes, proceed, Senator Hamiri.
said yesterday morning when I was moving that we adjourned for members to get an opportunity to look at
Senator Kamuri, put on your jacket.
Committee.
Senator Kamuri.
This is probably the most important bill
Order, Senator Kamuri.
processed or discussed or canvassed by this Senate. The most important.
Senator Kamuri, put on your jacket.
Touching on amendment of our constitution, a document that we hold so dear, a document that if we alter,
Senator, you are now muted. Put on your jacket and we can't hear you. Okay, maybe as he sorts himself out to put on the jacket, let me give Senator Petronila order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this constitutional amendment bill. I want to begin by thanking the committee, the joint committee of JLAC that came up with a very good report, very comprehensively done and very widely consulted. They had various experts that they consulted as they came up with this report. Mr. Speaker, knowing that this report was co-chaired by senior counsels, they have taken into consideration serious issues of constitutional nature that we need to look into as a house, leave alone the issue of errors in the two different bills in the National Assembly and in the Senate. There's the issue of the constituencies and whether a task force can do delimitation of boundaries and give us constituencies. That has been declared unconstitutional by this joint committee, and it's up to us as a house to see whether we need to correct some of these unconstitutional provisions in this bill. Mr. Speaker, I've also gone through the whole of Article 257, and Mr. Speaker, there is nowhere where it expressly says that Parliament cannot change the provisions of an amendment bill brought about by popular initiative. Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of 257 is that it is an amendment brought by the people. And when we talk about by the people, assuming there was no BBI, those are just ordinary Kenyans. They are bound to make mistakes because they are not the legislative arm. We are the people who make legislative interventions. So we should have an opportunity to make these corrections. The spirit of 257 indicates that we cannot change the substance or the will of the people. But it certainly does not say that we cannot change the form or the typographical errors that are in this bill. So I want to agree with my colleagues that we need not run away from this responsibility. We shall be judged harshly. So let's make the necessary legislative interventions as a house, first to correct that error of two bills. And Mr. Speaker, I don't know if it is too late, but we would have preferred to allow the National Assembly to do their bill, because that is the one that is assumably correct. Then they bring it here, the way we have always done. Then we can look at it as the Senate. So if it's too late, the leadership will tell us. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, in the memorandum of objectives and reasons of the bill, and I'm reading from the report on the Index 2, the promoters of the bill, that is the Building Bridges Initiative, indicate that the bill seeks to address certain issues. One, to address issues arising from the implementation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, specifically the need to resolve issues of divisive elections, promote gender equity in governance, strengthen the structure of devolution, increase resource allocation to counties, and broaden mechanisms for all the people of Kenya to benefit. That is what we are calling shared prosperity. And of course, harmonize certain roles and functions of the bicameral legislature. That is the Senate and the National Assembly. My question is, has the bill really, for example, resolved or harmonized the roles and functions of the bicameral legislature? I don't see that having been achieved. It's only the courts have helped us look like we are working in harmony by the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Senate agreeing, but only after certain bills were threatened to be thrown away. That's when they agreed to work with us. So I don't see how this bill has helped us harmonize our relationship with our young brothers and sisters on the other side. I don't call them small house, but they're just younger than we are. So, Mr. Speaker, the other issue was on the strengthening the structure of devolution. Having listened to the chair of the co-chair of this joint committee, they have actually weakened the Senate a great deal. Yet Senate's role is to check on counties and their governments. So when you weaken Senate, you are basically weakening devolution. You are basically weakening the counties. Mr. Speaker, it also talks about the issues of BBI, or rather this bill was supposed to resolve the issues of divisive elections. I have not seen any focus on the reform of IEBC to make sure that IEBC deals with the issues of divisive elections, other than expanding the executive, which will basically give the top tribes positions, and I'm saying this as a member of one of the top tribes, but Mr. Speaker, it will not resolve the issues of divisive elections. Resolving divisive elections includes making sure that we have a credible and fair electoral process. We did not touch on any issues that try to align or to restructure IEBC, which has the main mandate of conducting elections. Mr. Speaker, the vetting of ministers, PSs, and the other appointees by the executive, that has been removed completely from this bill, and something that was important for us to involve the people of Kenya who we represent in deciding who is going to implement the policies that we come up with as a country or as a house. Mr. Speaker, the chair also touched on the issue of revenue allocation and talked about the issue of per capita as a consideration in allocating of issues. And we are told that there are 7 counties that are going to lose money if we apply that formula. And if we apply that formula also, the role of the Senate in deciding what revenue allocation formula is supposed to be used will also be taken away from the Senate. That is another thing that is weakening the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I will lastly speak on the issue of gender equity. This bill, what we can call the BBI bill, was supposed to promote gender equity in governance. Mr. Speaker, what it has done, other than transferring women from the National Assembly to the Senate, where they have only been brought here so that they can vote, because the women who are here now nominated do not have a vote. Mr. Speaker, these women have left what we are calling the GAF, National Government Affirmative Action Fund, on the other end, to lose that fund, a fund that they fought for and held. Mr. Speaker, moving these women senators, women reps to the Senate also means that the women will be appointed as ministers, deputy prime ministers, and prime ministers. They will be nominated women. So why would we rather not have these, why would we rather not have women senators? Fine, so that we achieve the gender parity in the Senate, but retain the women reps in the National Assembly as they are, so that we don't seem to be losing the gains we put, the gains we made as women in the fight for gender equity. So I don't see how this bill has resolved the issue of gender equity. We'll still have women going to vie just simply to be nominated. And we already know in most cases, these nomination slots don't necessarily go to deserving cases. And Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support this report, and also add that Article 179 should also be amended to allow, is being amended, Article 179 is being amended, Mr. Speaker, to allow MCAs to summon governors. This is a role that we have been proud of as Senate, to summon governors here. And this is another way of weakening the Senate. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say, as I've said earlier, that this bill actually does not strengthen the structure of devolution, but weakens that structure by weakening the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Onesimus Murkomen.
So you're saying in my I'm not support?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a point of intervention from Senator Rose Nyamunga.
Hold my time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am sorry to interrupt my brother, Senator Murkomen, but I just needed some clarity, because in my view, I know we should be debating the BBI report, the BBI bill. I am not so clear whether we are debating the BBI bill or the report. I'm not sure, so I need some clarity, Mr. Speaker. Or are we doing both? Because which one are we supporting?
We are actually discussing the bill.
The report is to guide you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I know we are debating the bill, but I sympathize with my sister, my big sister, Senator Nyamunga, because and I know where that comes from. Senator Petrolina said she's supporting the report. And so, you know, there are varied understanding of the report in terms of its conclusions, Mr. Speaker, because you can't, the chair of the legal committee said it should be amended, and then, you know, all the other issues. So when one is supporting, it becomes, I understand, a contradiction. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I'd like to say that this is a very historic moment. The time we have does not do enough justice to the subject matter that is before us, but be it as it may, I'll try my best to make my few contributions to this very important debate in the country. Mr. Speaker, I stand to oppose this constitutional amendment bill. And Mr. Speaker, my position for this constitutional amendment bill is very clear. It starts with, Mr. Speaker, the basics. And the basics for me is the understanding of the popular initiative process of constitutional amendment. Mr. Speaker, there is a reason why there are various processes of amending the Constitution. One is through Parliament and the other is through popular initiative. Popular initiative, from the tautological understanding of our constitution making, the 2010 Constitution, and if you read the history, the Yash Palgai Commission report, the Constitution Review Commission, which, Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege of working there for a short period of time, is that, Mr. Speaker, most of the Kenyans were saying, apart from the process of amending the Constitution through Parliament, where the executive and the legislature have a say, we need another process that a common mwananchi can propose for amending the Constitution. So, Speaker, why I am very skeptical of this process is because the process of establishing the BBI committee, Mr. Speaker, was not a constitutional review committee. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, in terms of composition of its membership and the structure of the appointment of BBI, it was meant to look at certain issues that are affecting the country, and particularly, we were told to go around the country and find mechanism of uniting the country. We are grateful that one of the members of BBI steering committee is seated here, Mr. Speaker, as a senator. And Mr. Speaker, I must confess that I am aware of how she ended up being in that very BBI committee, the Senator of Machakos. And Mr. Speaker, all that process was not intended to amend the Constitution. Yes, Mr. Speaker, that's true. Mr. Speaker, the point to make, Mr. Speaker, here is that even if you go to the members of the committee, even Senator Haji was here and all others, the process was not intended to be a constitutional making body. But Mr. Speaker, it mutated, and we must accept that perhaps the intenders of the establishment of the BBI committee knew what they were doing, but the rest of the country was not made aware of what was the objective of this BBI process. So we were told, Mr. Speaker, we do this, we go to unite the country, collect views. I am glad the chair of the Legal Affairs Committee has made it clear that even some of the proposals and the report captures on amending the constituencies, Mr. Speaker, was never, Mr. Speaker, proposed by anybody anywhere across the country. That means, Mr. Speaker, this process was achieved through, Mr. Speaker, in my own opinion, deceit. The people of Kenya were deceived, Mr. Speaker, that this was a process intended in achieving a different objective, but those who had ulterior motives, Mr. Speaker, wanted to amend the Constitution. Why would people who have the institutions and disposition of the institutions of Parliament and the executive go and use a process that was for common mwananchi, Mr. Speaker, to pass through, Mr. Speaker, these constitutional amendments? I believe, Mr. Speaker, popular initiative in this process has been misused. It's been captured by those who have powers of the state. It is going to be a terrible thing for us to sanitize this approach because, Mr. Speaker, I believe it will not, future presidents will not stop at the current president and those who are in power. Mr. Speaker, future presidents will be doing exactly the same to achieve, Mr. Speaker, what they would call and tell Kenyans it's a legacy. There is no legacy here, Mr. Speaker. This thing is about deceit and deceiving the people of Kenya. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with Senator James Orengo that Article 257 of the Constitution does not bar, and the Constitution itself does not bar any of us and Parliament by itself from amending this Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to read Article 257, and particularly 257, Mr. Speaker, Article 257, 8. A bill under this article is passed by Parliament if supported by a majority of the members of each house. Mr. Speaker, if this house can pass a bill, then, Mr. Speaker, this house also retains the right to refuse to pass or to fail the bill, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, you cannot tell us, because I have had some arguments from certain lawyers, and they are entitled to their opinion because this is a matter of interpretation. But I disagree with them. That, Mr. Speaker, if Parliament does not pass the bill, it is inconsequential because the will of the people is supreme, because this is about popular initiative and therefore the people will have the final say. But it was not the people who initiated the amendment of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that you collected 1 million signatures, 4 million, 5 million signatures, Mr. Speaker, does not mean it is the people who initiated the popular initiative. Few people in the form of BBI Secretariat, in the form of PBI handshake partners, proposed the amendment, but they want to seek for people's signatures to pass this amendment. If you make an argument that Parliament or Senate can have, passing or failing the bill is inconsequential, Mr. Speaker, then why don't you make the same argument that county assemblies, even if they fail to pass by 24 county assemblies, it's inconsequential? because it doesn't make it more of the people when it's county assemblies and less of the people when the Senate and National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, refuse to pass the bill. What's my argument? My argument is that, Mr. Speaker, Parliament has a responsibility, and, Mr. Speaker, the failure of both houses of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, to pass the bill as the consequence of failing that bill and cannot proceed to referendum. And I will back my argument, Mr. Speaker, with Article 257(9), which says if Parliament passes the bill, it shall be submitted to the President for assent in accordance to Article 256(4) and 5. Let me make this argument. Mr. Speaker, assuming we were not amending the protected sections of the Constitution, we were not amending devolution, we were not amending structure of Parliament, we were not amending any section touching on human rights or representation. They were just, the amendments that are not protected under 255. And Parliament fails to pass. Mr. Speaker, do you want to tell me that, Mr. Speaker, the President was going to sign it into law, even if Parliament did not pass it? Mr. Speaker, there must be consequences. If both houses of Parliament fail to pass the bill, there must be consequences. And I want to back my argument with Article 257, now 10. If either House of Parliament fails to pass the bill, or the bill relates to a matter specified in Article 255(1), the proposed amendment shall be submitted to the people referendum. My argument is that for the bill to go to referendum, both houses of Parliament, either both of houses of Parliament pass it, or at least one House of Parliament pass it. But if both houses of Parliament fails to pass, my interpretation of Article 257(10) means that the bill collapses. And people should not fear to refuse to collapse this bill, because we have already debated here, the chair of the committee, minority leader, all the people who have made contributions, Senator Petrolina here, have referred to very glaring, Mr. Speaker, mistakes in this bill. And I'm coming to that argument in a few. So my take is that, and this question was put before the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court ran away from that responsibility of giving advice or opinion to the County Assembly of Nandi and Kericho, and I think the other county was Kajiado. Mr. Speaker, they transmitted back that question to the High Court, and that question is pending in the High Court. My argument is that both houses of Parliament either passed all of them, or at least one house, before we can discuss matters of referendum. That brings me to the second argument. Mr. Speaker, many people who have made contributions, including the chair, have talked about unconstitutional constitutional amendments, which is a paradox by itself. Constitutional law experts, Mr. Speaker, and constitutional law practitioners, many of whom are in these chambers, will tell you, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is what is called in law the gronum, which is, Mr. Speaker, the final law by itself. But, Mr. Speaker, can the final law be unconstitutional against itself? Can you say, Mr. Speaker, for example, an amendment is unconstitutional? What if that amendment passes and becomes part of that gronum? Mr. Speaker, can it then still be unconstitutional? The new thinking, Mr. Speaker, in the constitutional law practice is that, Mr. Speaker, even though the Constitution is the gronum, there are certain principles of the Constitution that carry supra-constitutional status. That is why you hear, Mr. Speaker, the arguments that the basic structure of the Constitution, the foundational principles of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, for example, you cannot, Mr. Speaker, say, Mr. Speaker, there are particular principles of the Constitution, and our Constitution, for example, Mr. Speaker, which are part of what in law or in Latin called jus cogens, Mr. Speaker, which is the peremptory norm, the norms that, Mr. Speaker, within which you cannot derogate against, Mr. Speaker. For example, you cannot amend the Constitution to legislate torture. You cannot amend the Constitution, for example, Mr. Speaker, even if it is a constitutional amendment, to legalize genocide. In the same breath, Mr. Speaker, the constitutional structures itself, Mr. Speaker, must protect the basic norms. What are the basic norms in our Constitution? The basic norms in this Constitution are provided for in Article 10 of the Constitution. And these norms include values and principles of governance, Mr. Speaker. Principles that are like rule of law, patriotism, national unity, sharing of devolution of power, rule of law, democracy, participation of the people, human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination, and protection of the marginalized. If these are the basic norms, then we cannot derogate against these norms, Mr. Speaker. Then the question we should ask ourselves, can the amendments that have been proposed in the BBI report pass the test of protecting the basic principles and values of the Constitution? Mr. Speaker, put in another way, is it possible for us to bring constitutional amendments that, Mr. Speaker, contradict the basic norms of the Constitution itself? For example, Mr. Speaker, we've said that in Article 81 that, Mr. Speaker, we must have gender equity, that all institutions of governance, including Senate National Assembly, must have, Mr. Speaker, at least a third of its membership, Mr. Speaker, must come from either gender. But we've come with the BBI report and said, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to amend the Constitution so that in 2032, and I don't know why the women folk who keep talking about here that there are many gains of women in this bill. This BBI report says in 2032, if you will not have achieved a third of women in the National Assembly, a third of women in the county assemblies, that will be the end. That will be the end of gender, Mr. Speaker, principle in our constitutional order. Meaning, if the county assembly will give Marakwet elect 20 MCS, Mr. Speaker, that are all men, there will be no nomination in 2032 because the principle that is the BBI report will only operate for 10 years. But ask yourself, Mr. Speaker, can you then provide that amendment that takes away that gender principle and still retain Article 81 of the Constitution that says at least a third? In 2032, we will have a problem. And the problem will be this amendment is sitting on what foundation, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, another example I'd like to give is that, Mr. Speaker, you have, I am a bit, Mr. Speaker, disoriented because I've seen the time is running. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to give one more example. That, Mr. Speaker, you have a provision that says there must be equity in share of positions in government and representation in constituencies. Is it then fair, Mr. Speaker, to say that responsibility is left to IBC in Article 89 of the Constitution, but go to the schedule of the Constitution and look some of the constituencies, and for this matter 70 of them, away, Mr. Speaker, from the discussion in the principles of Article 10 that, Mr. Speaker, it must be distributed fairly. Mr. Speaker, the same question would be asked in terms of, Mr. Speaker, the question of the provision of the ombudsman position. I saw the chair of the Legal Affairs Committee struggling, trying to justify, Mr. Speaker, that the ombudsman, yes, will be there. He will be there investigating judges. He will be there intimidating judges, Mr. Speaker. He will be there giving calls and telling judges, if you don't do this, if you don't do the other one, you will be removed. But then ask ourselves that, the Constitution allows JSC to retain its power, Mr. Speaker, to investigate and interrogate judges. How will the two provisions sit together? How do you bring constitutional amendment that contradict the basic structure of the Constitution and the basic foundation of the Constitution in terms of the values and principles, Mr. Speaker? It is, Mr. Speaker, these glaring constitutional contradictions that you find in SRC provisions, Mr. Speaker, as the chair has talked about, that you find in Article 203 of the Constitution. Article 217 says, on division of revenue, Mr. Speaker, there must be equity, and you must take care of the constituencies and the counties that are, Mr. Speaker, marginalized for a long period of time. Then you bring a constitutional amendment that says you cap, Mr. Speaker, the resource they will get in terms of the per capita, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the population. Mr. Speaker, the question you ask yourself, is it fair after the effort we put, Mr. Speaker, this last year on division of revenue, that now we go back and take away those gains from counties like Lamu, from Tana River, from Wajir, from Garissa, Mr. Speaker, and we happily sit here and say these counties can lose money anyway, and we are putting that principle in the Constitution. I understand why the chair was struggling. He was struggling, Mr. Speaker, because he was saying we will leave that to interpretation. Let Parliament, when it comes, Mr. Speaker, why would we put ourselves in this kind of situation where we are amending the Constitution knowing too well that, Mr. Speaker, most of the provisions of the Constitution are assaulting the basic structure and the foundation of the Constitution. Why would we do that? So that then a few people can achieve their political objectives, Mr. Speaker, at the expense of the principles and values of the country. I submit, Mr. Speaker, that even though time is too short for me to make this, can I request 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker? Only 2.
No, just finish because it's I
know it's going to end in a short while. Mr. Speaker, my submission will be this: that, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution does not prohibit this House or the National Assembly to amend this bill. And whatever is not prohibited by this Constitution, and I've read Article 1 to the last article, Mr. Speaker, even to the schedule, since these provisions are not prohibited, and I want to declare, I want to tell Senator Rengo and all the senators who are here, Elgeyo Marakwet and the region I come from, the Rift Valley, loses nothing if, Mr. Speaker, this bill passes as it is. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm not the senator of only one region. We must look at the country as a whole. I come from a region who perhaps has received a fair share of an extra constituencies, and we are happy with it. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm still unhappy with the bill. Why? Because I am a senator of Kenya. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that when Kenya is well, when all of us are well, no one should look at Murkomen and look my political disposition or where I come from and think, okay, there are certain things that we are going to lose. Mr. Speaker, I was in Yes campaign in the 2010 Constitution. I worked with people like Senator James Orengo. And, Mr. Speaker, we passed the Constitution. But the people who benefited most when the Constitution passed, including the Deputy President, were in law. Being in law, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, defending basic issues that are about this Constitution does not mean you are going to be personally at a loss. So if people are going to force on us this Constitution that it must pass by force, I want to go on record as one of the citizens of this republic to say these amendments in the BBI report, Mr. Speaker, are clawing back the gains we achieved on 2010 Constitution in terms of independence of the judiciary, in terms of principles of separation of powers, Mr. Speaker, in terms of bringing matters related to executive, Mr. Speaker, to Parliament, so that you will have one constituent that has a minister, Mr. Speaker, and another one that doesn't have, Mr. Speaker, creating inequality. If we really wanted to change the structure of government in this country, why didn't we go straight to parliamentary system of government? How are we going to sit the amendments we brought here for certain few members of parliament to come to become cabinet?
Okay, your time is up. Your time is up. Your time is up. You are not on record, Senator Murkomen. Order, Senator Murkomen. Let me tell you. No, I even added you. No. Senators, as you come to speak, please have a maximum of 20 minutes in your mind so that you are able to consolidate what you want to say within the 20 minutes. Senator Haniri, virtual.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope you can now hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah. Now you are okay.
Once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to make my comments on this bill. And as had stated earlier, that for this country and this Parliament, and Mr. Speaker, I had said yesterday that this is probably the most important bill that this Senate or this Parliament will discuss in their lifetime, in the life of this Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that is touching on amending the Constitution of Kenya 2010, a document that as a country we hold so dearly. Mr. Speaker, I listened to Senator James Orengo yesterday, and he narrated that the Constitution, this Constitution 2010 is a constitution that we achieved through blood and sweat. There are people who paid the ultimate price, people who lost their lives for us to have this constitution. And therefore, any attempt to amend it, Mr. Speaker, must be a serious amendment that makes sense to Kenyans. As we debate this bill, Mr. Speaker, let's have the minds to, in our mind the people that elected us to represent them. If we are amending this, it should not be for certain individuals or group of individuals. It should be for the good of the whole country. I have seen very many things, very many good things in this bill. But Mr. Speaker, as well, there are other things that, in my opinion, we must be given an opportunity as Parliament to make amendments, Mr. Speaker. I have listened to those the bill without amendment, and they are quoting Chapter 257 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I have read Chapter 257 of the Constitution in and out. I do not see anywhere where this Article 257 bars us from making an amendment. I know Senator Murkomen read Article 257, paragraph 8. But Mr. Speaker, just for clarity, I want to make it very clear. There's nothing that bars us from making amendments and correcting the things that we think are not right in this bill, so that we send to Kenyans in the referendum a bill that has been refined. Mr. Speaker, Chapter 257, Article 257 of the Constitution has 10 sub-articles. The first sub-article says that an amendment to this Constitution may be proposed by a popular initiative signed by at least 1 million registered voters. That was done. The second one says a popular initiative for an amendment to this Constitution may be in the form of a general suggestion or formulated draft bill. 3, if a popular initiative is in the form of a general suggestion, the promoters of that popular initiative shall formulate it into a draft bill. Mr. Speaker, sub-article 4, the promoters of the popular initiative shall deliver the draft bill and the supporting signatures to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, which shall verify the initiative is supported by at least 1 million registered voters. That was done. If the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is satisfied that the initiative meets the requirements of this article, the Commission shall submit the draft bill to each county assembly for consideration within 3 months after the date it was submitted to the Commission. Article 6, if the county assemblies, Mr. Speaker, approves the draft bill made by the Commission, the Speaker of the County Assembly shall deliver a copy of the draft bill jointly to the Speakers of the 2 Houses of Parliament with a certificate that the County Assemblies has approved it. Mr. Speaker, it goes further to say, if a draft bill has been approved by a majority of the County Assemblies, it shall be introduced in Parliament without delay. That is what you did yesterday, Mr. Speaker. A bill under this article is passed by Parliament if supported by a majority of the members of each house. If Parliament passes the bill, it shall be submitted to the President for assent in accordance with the Article 256. Mr. Speaker, where in that Article 257 does it state that as a Parliament we cannot make amendments to this bill? This is a good document, Mr. Speaker, but it has its flaws. Let us be allowed to correct the flaws that are in there, and there are not many, Mr. Speaker. We gave this bill when it was brought to us, to our committee that is led by the Ebola Senator for Nyamira, Senator Omogeni, who is a senior counsel, a man I believe in. He has tabled a report on the same, Mr. Speaker, and they have told us that some of the sections in the bill are unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, my point this morning, I want to insist that for us to support this bill, we should be allowed to make those necessary amendments, and particularly the creation of constituencies, which is in the bill as stated as Schedule 2 or second schedule, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, we want to increase constituencies, but our constitution is very clear on how to increase constituencies and how to distribute them. It is the responsibility of the IEBC. Why are we taking that responsibility that has been given to them in the Constitution away from them, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the way these constituencies have been distributed is very wanting, Mr. Speaker. I cry for my people of Vihiga County. Mr. Speaker, we believe strongly that if we are going to have an additional 70 constituencies, there is no way Vihiga can be left out, Mr. Speaker. We need a constituency in Hamisi. We have made these proposals for Hamisi to be split into two, and we believe, Mr. Speaker, if justice was done, then for sure we would have gotten a constituency as the people of Vihiga and the Hamisi constituency. Mr. Speaker, the other thing that I think should be rectified in the bill, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are already burdened by the high wage bill. I do not see the justification of even increasing these constituencies, Mr. Speaker. Moving the constituencies from members of parliament from 290 to 360, Mr. Speaker, is just adding the burden to Kenyans, and Mr. Speaker, this will result in overrepresentation. We should look at other jurisdictions and compare ourselves with those jurisdictions. The US, as Kanata said, the UK, China, and so forth. Mr. Speaker, the wage bill is already too high. We cannot afford to increase the number of members of parliament in the National Assembly from 290 to 360 and Senate from the current 47 to the 67 to 94. I am opposed to this, and if we are given an opportunity to amend, this is one of the amendments that I'm going to be proposing. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the other issue that I will be proposing to amend, yes, it is a very good thing that we are creating the office of the Ombudsman. But we made so many gains in the Constitution Kenyan Constitution 2010, whereby there is clear separation of powers. We cannot create the office of the Ombudsman and then say that the Ombudsman is going to be nominated by the President. Where is the separation of powers? Where is the independence of the judiciary? So it is a good thing that we are creating the office of the Ombudsman. But Madam Speaker, the way the Ombudsman should be appointed, we should amend that so that it is not the President nominating. As I said earlier, Madam Speaker, there are so many good things in this bill. We do not want to throw it out all the same, like Senator Murukomen is proposing. There are many gains. If we are allowed to make the amendments, we will be able to pass this bill and take it to Kenyans, and I'm sure Kenyans will pass it. The bill is introducing very new clauses that will be very, very important to our people. I am particularly impressed by introduction of Article 11A, Economy and Shared Prosperity. Mr. Speaker, it says that this constitution recognizes the need for an economic system that provides equitable opportunities for all people of Kenya to benefit from economic growth in comprehensive, fair, and sustainable manner. And it says that, among other things, the state shall promote an economic system that supports small and micro enterprises. This is a key introduction, a milestone. There is equitable distribution of our resources, that the small and micro enterprises are supported by the state, and that's where many Kenyans belong. The other thing that, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy with in the bill, it introduces a new chapter 18A, responsibilities of a citizen. This constitution recognizes responsibilities of a citizen as a key building and prosperous, fair, and secure nation. Every citizen has a responsibility to, among other things, fulfill parental responsibilities towards their children, practice ethical conduct, and combat corruption. For the first time, we are putting in our constitution matters to do with the fight against corruption. This is adding a lot of value to our constitution, Madam Speaker, and it's one of the issues that I think we will benefit if we pass this bill, but after the amendments that I've proposed. Mr. Speaker, for unifying the country and for inclusivity, we are creating, the bill is creating the office of the Prime Minister and his two deputies, and creating now for the first time officially the position of official opposition leader. In any democracy, Mr. Speaker, you need a robust opposition that will put government to check, so that they provide proper checks and balances. So I think these two inclusions of the creation of a Prime Minister and deputies, and also creation of an official opposition, will not only provide checks and balances, but it will also ensure that there is inclusivity in the overall government. Executive and opposition. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, there is a new article that is being now making CDF official and constitutional, introducing also Article 172, creation of a ward development funds, Mr. Speaker. For us to get the full gains of devolution, Mr. Speaker, we must have this ward development fund for equity, Mr. Speaker, so that all development, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we know of cases where governors will favor some wards that maybe they think support them more than the others. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, creation of this will ensure equitable distribution of the funds that the Senate fights so hard to go to the counties. And the biggest gain, Madam Speaker, for me, is the increase of the funds that go to the counties, where now we're making it official that the funds that will go to the counties is 35% and not 15% of the total revenue. Madam Speaker, as I have said before, that one of the biggest gains in the Constitution 2010 is devolution. That is the inclusion that took care of the common manage. Of course, there are other gains that took care of other groups of people. But devolution is the biggest gain that we got in Constitution 2010. We must protect it with our sweat and blood and ensure that it works. And giving more money for devolution, Madam Speaker, is a step in the right direction, Madam Speaker, strengthening devolution in this country. I also want to hail the provision that now members of Parliament can be appointed to the executive as ministers. I came to Parliament when we had the previous system where ministers came from Parliament, where members elected from constituencies interacted directly with ministers, asked questions, and I thought the system works better than first statements to chairmen of committees who are not members of executive, and they rely on the ministers to give them answers. It is important that we have the executive in the Parliament so that it is answerable to the people of Kenya through their elected leaders who are the members of Parliament. I therefore hail so much the idea of returning ministers to Parliament so that they can be accessible to members of Parliament who are the representatives of people. I therefore want to state, Madam Speaker, I know my time is almost up, that I support this bill, but I'm going to vote for it if we are allowed to make the amendments that we think we should make for the bill to go through.
Senator Wamangate. Not Wambua. Yes, what's your point of order?
No, Madam Speaker, sorry to interrupt, and I don't mean to challenge your authority, but there's a reason why we come early to queue. I was the first one to arrive in this chamber this morning. The only person who sat ahead of me was Senator Orungu Kangata. Since then, 4 other, or 5 actually, if you include Senator Matangi, have been granted the opportunity to speak. I don't think that is fair.
Senator, I'll give you the opportunity next, so please go, continue.
That's unfair. Why do we come? Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, thank you very much, and I want to begin, Madam Speaker, by taking the opportunity to thank and congratulate, Madam Speaker, the team that was appointed by this House. That is a team led by Senator Omogeni and the other senators in the Committee on Legal Affairs that then did the work that culminated in the report that we have. And in congratulating them, Madam Speaker, I believe that it is also a time when, as the House, we have to answer affirmatively to the same question that we asked. Because the question has been asked here continuously, Madam Speaker, does Parliament act or exist in vain as far as this process is concerned, Madam Speaker? And the first answer I want to provide to that, Madam Speaker, in my view, is that that question was answered affirmatively when we first held the discussion in the Speaker's office when allowing that committee to join with the Committee of the National Assembly. And indeed, in that sitting, the question was, should they invite public participation? And it was arrived in the affirmative that indeed that committee can invite public participation, collect views, albeit then that information and those views inform the report of the committee, Madam Speaker. And I think it is at that point that decision was made that Parliament does not exist and is not a conveyor belt in this process, Madam Speaker. But then even the more fundamental question, as I make my points on the bill itself, I think the more fundamental question is this. Then, ourselves as senators, do we want then our committee to have acted in vain in the report that they have tabled here, Madam Speaker? Because the committee has proffered views, opinions, and positions that they have arrived at after deliberations, and they have tabled a report which we have all agreed, Madam Speaker, that is supposed to inform the debate and help to shape the opinion of members. And the reason I raise this point, Madam Speaker, is this, because if you listen to our continued debate, while the committee was clear, and that is what the chairperson started with, he said that we have resolved after our deliberations and collections of views at the tail end of the report. We have said that one, the report can be adopted, and the board can be, the bill can be passed, and then members of the public will have the decision. But even more fundamental is on the question of, did the committee resolve the question of Article 257 and whether this is a bill that is promoted by the people of the Republic of Kenya? And Senator Morgan was very clear here when he said that the Committee of Senate resolved that question. And that's why I said I think it's also, as we ventilate, as we bring out our issues, it's also important for us to ask ourselves, do we also want our committee to have acted in vain? But having said that, Madam Speaker, I want to associate myself with most of the views that my colleagues have aired here. And in recognizing, Madam Speaker, that this bill is a bill that has proposed a spectrum of issues extremely wide, Madam Speaker, so wide such that one would say that it was a very daring venture to attempt to make amendments to the Constitution in so many aspects of it, Madam Speaker. But at the end of the day, the process has culminated in the bill that we have today, and most of those issues have been dissected and opinions and opposition arrived at, and we're able to proceed from there, Madam Speaker. And in my view, Madam Speaker, I believe that the bill has addressed, in that wideness of issues, specific issues that we should be able to say firmly that are issues since we promulgated our Constitution 2010 have been matters that still required the input of legal minds, of deeper thinking, so that we can arrive at more current day issues, Madam Speaker, and positions that will help us make progress. And I say so, Madam Speaker, recognizing that indeed the Constitution itself, our Constitution 2010, envisaged that it is possible and allowable to amend it. And I want to laud the team that started this process, Madam Speaker, in recognizing that there are various gains that we must say honestly are there. Madam Speaker, in the introduction of the new Article 11A, Madam Speaker, wholly we all know as Kenyans that the backbone of our economy, Madam Speaker, is on largely the SMEs, the small traders, the small business people, the small farmers, Madam Speaker. This bill has proposed that that we build an economic system that supports small and micro enterprises, Madam Speaker. And I was one of the sponsors, Madam Speaker, of a bill in this House that supports SMEs, Madam Speaker, to ensure that when government is doing its planning, when funds are being allocated, that there is a specific fund and kitty that goes directly to ensuring that SMEs, small traders, business people are strengthened in this republic, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, one of the issues we have been grappling with all along is on the question of what responsibility do we have as citizens to ensure that we have a country where corruption is dealt with finality, Madam Speaker. And I also want to, Madam Speaker, point at the new article, Madam Speaker, 18A, on the responsibilities of a citizen, Madam Speaker. And in this, I do so because most of the time we have been reduced to just making noise, to just complaining, to just lamenting. But in this article, Madam Speaker, it clearly spells out that it is now the responsibility of every citizen to practice ethical conduct and combat corruption, Madam Speaker, so that we don't have to sit here all the time and wait and ask in the House of Parliament, what is EACC doing, Madam Speaker? What is the DCI doing? That indeed this responsibility is now constitutional to each one of us, Madam Speaker. In Article 89, Madam Speaker, and this is a discussion I would like to end with, Madam Speaker, on the creation, 89.1, Madam Speaker, on the creation of the 360 constituencies, Madam Speaker, from 290. I'll close the few remarks I have on that particular issue, Madam Speaker, because I have a word or two on it. The other article, Madam Speaker, I may want to point out at is, Madam Speaker, the article that has been amended, Article 96.3, Madam Speaker. And in so doing, I want to remember, as a member of this House who has sat in the Public Accounts Committee from the year 2013 to the year 2015. And Madam Speaker, all of the things that we had to combat with, the governor then for Nairobi, immediately when the Auditor General tabled the first reports into this House, Madam Speaker, governors came together and they proceeded to court, and indeed it was the then governor for Nairobi who proceeded to a court in Kirinyaga, Madam Speaker, and obtained orders. Those orders which said that the Senate is only limited to oversight of funds allocated to counties by national government and have no role in resources that are collected locally in counties, Madam Speaker. And this was a big blow. When the Auditor General is reporting to the Senate, he reports together with all the revenue that is collected at county level, but we were barred by law, Madam Speaker, and by a court ruling that we could not, Madam Speaker, look at the funds that have been allocated in our counties, knowing very well the problems that we have even today of accountability at county government level, Madam Speaker. And that's why I want to say that I believe
that following this amendment, now we can freely and lawfully make sure that we look at what is happening at our county levels, government level, and indeed the funds that are collected locally within our county, Madam Speaker, without delving so much into it, because that's an area where we can speak until tomorrow, Madam Speaker. On the question of the composition of how this house will look like, Madam Speaker, that one I've expressed myself before as the Senator for Kiambu, and I've said, Madam Speaker, that I believe that as history judges what we did as the senators who sat here before, the jury is out there as to did we do our best to represent a more strengthened Senate to ensure that the representation that will be here is one that will be firm, strong, and the one that will carry on the work that this House has done, Madam Speaker. And I believe that if we had stuck to the process of elections that had been proposed in our earlier system, whereby we have 47 elected senators, that would have been better off. But now that this proposal is there to have 94 members sitting in this House, Madam Speaker, so be it. Madam Speaker, on the question of Article 107A on the creation of the office of a leader of official position, Madam Speaker, I want to express my views strongly on this and say I believe that it is a positive move. In this sense, Madam Speaker, because for the last many years in this House, when we've been here for the last 8 years, Madam Speaker, one of the questions that have been bugging the minds of Kenyans is this: do we still have a robust opposition that can put government on its toes? Can we have hard questions being asked by somebody who is not saying that I'm still a part of the system and so we have to comply? And in forward looking, I believe, Madam Speaker, that it is the right time that we should have an official opposition leader in the House, whereby for posterity we are able to look that person and that team in the eye and ask them, have you seen what the government of the day is doing, Madam Speaker? And we have a history that speaks for itself. I've listened to Senator James Orengo here many times when he narrates how, as a House, they put up a fight, Madam Speaker, to have the repeal of Section 2A, Madam Speaker. And we do not want to get to a position, again, in the history of our country, Madam Speaker, when we do not have an opposition that is firm and, Madam Speaker, that is independent of government. Madam Speaker, on the question of this House, Madam Speaker, since we came into this House in 2013, most of the time when the leadership of this House has had to stand and make our case, we have been ridiculed. There's a time I remember personally sitting in a meeting and our leader of majority was in that meeting. And you know the comment that was made was that, do you know that even your position is not in the Constitution? So what are you coming to tell us, Madam Speaker? That was a comment that was made when I was there. And that is why I want to laud the inclusion of that Article 108A, which now ensures that the leadership of the Senate is now entrenched in the Constitution, and it is no longer a case that can be used either in jest to ridicule, Madam Speaker, or to look like it is a favor that you have a leader sitting in a bicameral system in the upper house who is a majority leader but unrecognized by the Constitution, Madam Speaker. And so that's why I think, even as we look at the issues where one would say, has there been good proposals in this bill, Madam Speaker, I believe those are some of the positive, Madam Speaker, aspects of this bill that one may be able to look at, and the structure of leadership in this House, Madam Speaker, have been made clear there, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it follows then in these amendments, Madam Speaker, that cabinet secretaries have been renamed, Madam Speaker, into cabinet ministers. I don't know whether, in my view, it is okay that it has been done, but you know, we must entrench this thinking in Kenyans, that it is not the type and title of the name that you carry. You've been called a minister or being called a secretary or whatever, that does not lessen or diminish the kind of work that you do. It is the requirement of your office that you need to deliver. And it is all right now that you'll be calling them Madam Speaker, you'll be calling them cabinet ministers.
in my view, it was, I believe it was just a question of a hangover of names that were used before. But I did not believe that it had essentially any input in ensuring that, that there is any value input. But because it is the view of Kenyans, and the committee has told us that indeed as Article 257, that it is the views of our people that we are talking about, Madam Speaker, that be as it may. Madam Speaker, in Article 142, there's the amendment that requires the expansion of time for the Supreme Court to determine when a matter of the presidential election, Madam Speaker, has been raised. And I also want to commend that proposal to increase that duration to 30 days, Madam Speaker, given the fact that I was one of those during the first presidential petition who was very pessimistic, Madam Speaker, and I must confess to that. Because when the panel of Supreme Court judges sat and looking at the first presidential petition, Madam Speaker, one of the most curious things was that they were all new justices of the High Court. None of them, actually, at that time had even penned a single ruling anywhere, Madam Speaker. And we're asking ourselves, what kind of ruling are they going to come up with? Madam Speaker,
continue, order members. You know, you know what you do if you have to say something. So, Senator, continue.
Madam Speaker, my view, Madam Speaker, was that at that time, and I've expressed my own views then, was it possible for those justices then to come within that short period of 14 days, come up with a reasoned ruling, Madam Speaker? Yes, they did, and it was reasoned, and it was well. And what I'm saying, Madam Speaker, is now that at least you have 30 days, Madam Speaker, when a ruling now can be reasoned and passed on, Madam Speaker, then we are better off with the 30 days, Madam Speaker.
What's the point of information, Senator?
Not yet. Madam Speaker, lest it remains on record on a statement made by Incurium, Madam Speaker, the distinguished senator for Kiambu has alleged that the first presidential petition, I believe is meaning the one of 2013, was presided over by judges who had never sat in court and made any ruling. I want to correct that misleading impression that we had distinguished judges of the Supreme Court at the time, my own Professor Jackson Ojwang, my sister whom we had practiced law with, Kaplana Rawal. We had Justice Tunoi, a very distinguished judge. We had Muhammad Ibrahim, who had been in the court for a long time. So the distinguished senator for Kiambu is responsible for the veracity and accuracy of the statement he makes on the floor. And he should not mislead Kenyans.
Senator, be adequately informed. Be adequately informed.
Madam Speaker, I think maybe if it's my memory that fails me, but there's the element of most of them not having sat, Madam Speaker. You know, but Madam Speaker, that was my view. And as I continue, Madam Speaker, on the question of Madam Speaker, the creation of the office of the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, I believe it is in order to rename the office of the Majority Leader in the House, Madam Speaker, to have the title of Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, lest my time runs out, I want to go to one of the issues that I believe is of a lot of importance to me, Madam Speaker, of which I felt I would hold the liberty to disagree with the committee, Madam Speaker, on the question of, is it constitutional, Madam Speaker, or unconstitutional for the committee, for the promoters of the bill to have proposed to create the 70 constituencies, Madam Speaker, and indeed allocate them, Madam Speaker. And I want to argue, Madam Speaker, and make my point here, that it is my firm faith and belief that nowhere that I have produced in this constitution, Madam Speaker, has it suggested, as proposed by the committee, that they have made reservations to the extent that the proposition to have the 70 constituencies and have them allocated either eats or usurps into the powers of IEBC, Madam Speaker. There is nowhere between Article 88 and all the way Article 89 to the end where it proposes at all that the IEBC ever had in our past constitution the power to either create or allocate any sub-county or constituency, Madam Speaker. There is none, Madam Speaker. And I have my facts here. I will make my argument, and any person, Madam Speaker, who has a contrary view can come to this floor and make the same, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in Article 88, Madam Speaker, which creates IEBC.
Senator Wambua, and for me, I prefer if you put your button for intervention. It makes my work very easy. It's not on, but I'll give you the opportunity.
Madam Speaker, is the distinguished senator for Kiambu, who is also the chair of my committee in roads, in order to mislead this House and this country that the IEBC has no responsibility whatsoever in the creation and allocation of constituencies in this country? Madam Speaker, is he in order? Is he in order, Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, I can see.
Madam Speaker, let me use my time.
1 more minute, Senator.
Let me use my time, Madam Speaker.
You will be given your time.
I've been interrupted.
Senator Mugeni, you will be given your time, so you don't need to worry about. You only have 1 minute left, and you'll get it.
You misled us throughout.
No.
You only have 1 minute anyway.
Please give the mic. Give Senator Mugeni the mic. You can come to the dispatch.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I watched the Senator for Kiambu, is my very good friend, doing a show on Citizen this morning and misleading 48 million Kenyans on the provisions of the Constitution. But I don't think we'll allow him to mislead the House. The Speaker, if Senator Matangi has ever read this Constitution, and I believe he has, he can go to Article 88 of the Constitution and read sub-article 4, sub-article C. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, that Constitution says that the function of IEBC will be for delimitation of constituencies and wards. What he was telling the country in the morning relates to amendments of Article 89 and 97. And what he was saying, Kenyans have a right to propose amendments to those articles and increase constituencies from 290 to 360. But the function of delimitation under this Constitution, Senator Matangi, is with a constitutional body called Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. That is in black and white, and we must respect what the Constitution of Kenya says in Article 88.
Senator Omatangi, please wind up. We'll give you 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, yes. We are reading the same Constitution. There are not two constitutions, only one. And the senator, who is also a senior counsel, has read that part, which he says is delimitation. And I'm clear about my facts. Madam Speaker, Article 89(6) says that if necessary, the Commission shall alter the names and boundaries of constituencies, alter the names and boundaries, and the number and names of wards. And the Constitution is clear. It goes to number of names and wards. The IEBC, Madam Speaker, the IEBC has got the power under our Constitution to alter the boundaries of constituencies and not the number. But it has got the power to alter the number of wards, Madam Speaker. And that is my point. starts by saying that there shall be 290 constituencies. How would it start by saying there are 290 constituencies and then give the same IEBC the power to add the constituencies, Madam Speaker? And that's what I'm saying. It never anywhere in this constitution says that IEBC can add or alter the number. And that is why it is clear, 89.6. Please read it. Madam Speaker, if I read 89.7 as requested, Madam Speaker, it says that in reviewing the constituency and ward boundaries, Madam Speaker, the Commission shall consult interested parties and B, progressively work towards ensuring that the number of inhabitants in each constituency and ward is nearly as equal as the population. Now, Madam Speaker, in compliance with the Madam Speaker, it does not propose at all that there will be extra constituencies created by IEBC. The constitution makers, Madam Speaker, had a valid case in saying that, Madam Speaker, and distinguishing between wards and constituencies. And that is the misdemeanor, Madam Speaker. I believe, Madam Speaker, that the wording on that is very, very correct, Madam Speaker. And that is my case, Madam Speaker. And now Senator, you will get... Senator, please take your seat. Senator Ongeri, what's your point of order? But you know the debate is already... Yes. It's already over.
Madam Speaker,
you can make it
I've been sitting here silently just to inform my friend and a great friend, Senator Wamatangi, that the very same Article 89 3, the Commission shall review the number, names, and boundaries of wards periodically. Numbers. Number. No.
Thank you. No, we are not going back to that debate. We are not going backwards. Senator Rokericho, Senator Cheriot, you can do a Kamkunji and get through that.
Madam Speaker, you need to bring order to the House. Senator Matangi.
Senator, one minute. Senator Mutula Jr.
Madam Speaker, in correcting Senator Matangi, we want to declare that we also love him, and sometimes it's correct to say sometimes you don't have the information properly. Senator Matangi, please read the whole Constitution, 89 all the way down, but I prefer you read 9. Yes, subject to 1, 2, 3, 4. The names and details of the boundaries of constituencies and wards determined by the Commission shall be published in the Gazette. Now, the cause of action for any Kenyan can only arise after the Commission gives the names, the details of constituencies and wards. That Commission is the IEBC. There's no other. So that we don't have a back and forth.
Yes, on a point of order. Can you let Senator Mutula finish first?
Yes. So that the point should be that once IEBC makes a decision, and I'd like Senator Matangi to listen to me, because he's my brother, and I'm not going to charge him for this advice. The only time a Kenyan can question a decision on a constituency and a ward is after IEBC has made a decision. And it's important for the record. We're doing this for the record. And if you go back to your transitional clauses, Senator Matangi, the current IEBC is a successor of a former IEBRC. IEC. That, yes, to the extent that this transitional commission that was then prior to this current IEBC was also doing boundaries and is covered in the transitional commission. I'm saying this for good order so that we don't confuse the issues, and then when the time you don't get yourself into a legal quagmire. Ignorance is no longer bliss when it comes to the law. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, you know Senator Wamatangi is no longer on the floor. You are also eating, you should have raised this issue while he was still on the floor, because we are also eating on your time. Let's proceed. We are not going backwards there. Senator for Kericho.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We can carry out that debate elsewhere, because they'll distract me if they continue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really want to appreciate this opportunity to make my contribution on behalf of the people of Kericho on this very important bill that has been brought before us, Madam Speaker, and share what I consider to be my thoughts and reflections on what the feeling of the people that I represent in this House are with regards to this attempt to amend the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I'd wish to delve into a debate that has prominently featured in this House from earlier on, even before this bill came to this House, on the interpretation of Article 257, subsection 10, with regards to what latitude do we enjoy as Parliament on a popular initiative. Madam Speaker, I wish to be clear about it from the very onset that I belong to the school of thought that believes that Parliament does not have a ceremonial duty of just being paper pushers with regards to any bill that is presented before it, be it the regular bills that are brought before us or a constitutional amendment bill such as the one that we have before us. Madam Speaker, I have listened to people attempt to even limit our mandate. Very prominent lawyers and scholars argue that actually our duty as Parliament is only limited to as far as correcting typographical errors. I cannot be convinced, Madam Speaker, that the people of Kenya can elect senators into this House, members of National Assembly, serious people, only for us to come and reduce them to be lexicographers, that their work is only to check spelling mistakes and errors, and not interpret what they feel ought to be the right direction that the country needs to take. Madam Speaker, my reading of Article 1 of our Constitution on the three arms of the government that Kenyans have donated their sovereign power to. In fact, number one on that list is Parliament. If it was possible, Madam Speaker, for all the 47 million Kenyans to gather, and since it is not possible, Madam Speaker, the only arm of government that comes closest to a gathering of the 47 million of Kenyans is Parliament. The judiciary cannot claim to exercise that authority, neither can the executive. But since I sit here on behalf of the 1.2 million residents of Kericho County, I represent them. And any time they attempt to do anything that has the force of law, as per the dictates of Article 94, as was correctly pointed out by the Chair of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, then I am duty-bound to ensure that whatever they are doing advances their interest, because that is my duty. That is representation. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I cannot agree to the school of thought that is being advanced by a few of us that our duty in this exercise is only purely ceremonial. I believe that if granted an opportunity, and I have taken time to listen to the proposers of this bill, the kind of things that they aim to achieve, they are good things. They are progressive proposals that are in this particular bill, Madam Speaker. But it will be an abdication of my responsibility as a leader if I tell my constituents that I read the report. I even went further to read these almost 200 pages of report that has been produced by our committee, Madam Speaker, which clearly points out to the errors that are herein in this bill, and still tell them that my hands are tied, you do with it as you wish. I do not believe that was the intention of the drafters of our Constitution, Madam Speaker. You'd recall, now going on, Madam Speaker, to my consideration of what I think ails this particular process and the technical issues that are bound therein, that in 2017,
the very good Chief Justice, David Maraga, reminded the country that the process is, that the product is as good as the process that was used to achieve it. What has been the process of attaining this particular bill? I may be young, Madam Speaker, but I'm not too young to remember that there have previously been other attempts to amend our constitution. I consciously remember the 2005 attempt, the 2010 attempt that successfully gave us a constitution that we are now trying to amend, and what the procedures. It was a gathering of all Kenyans where everybody was allowed the democratic free will to speak as they wish. But what do I follow when I see what has been happening in this particular BBI process, Madam Speaker? There has been a clear attempt to stifle the voices and thoughts of those who don't agree with this process. It will be wrong on my part to support such a process that is flawed from the onset. If you do recall, and a few of our colleagues here were ministers in President Mwai Kibaki's cabinet, in 2010, perhaps having learned from the misadventure of 2005 and the very unfortunate events that happened in 2007, President Kibaki allowed even his ministers to choose which side of the constitutional debate to belong. I can count as many as 4 ministers that I remember, including the current majority leader, who were in opposition or did not or belong to the no camp at that particular time when we were amending this constitution. They were not threatened. DCI officers were not sent to raid their homes. But this particular exercise, where county governors and anybody who has dared to exercise their free thought on this particular document has had all manner of threats, intimidation, blackmail. Therefore, it pricks my conscience, and it will be a very unfortunate event, Madam Speaker, if we allowed such a process to pass. We will actually be dancing on the graves of the very patriotic Kenyans who paid a heavy price for us to have the 2010 Constitution, if we allowed it to pass. Madam Speaker, in fact, if the unfortunate event that this BBI process succeeds in amending our constitution, it will be a case study across the world on how not to amend a constitution. This is not how to do it. Something is absolutely wrong. And that's why I must stand and declare today, Madam Speaker, that much as I agree with so many of the proposals that have been shared in, we must be able to point out what are some of the errors that we point out. Moving on to the technical issues, Madam Speaker, of the things. Tinkering with independent institutions, Madam Speaker. Number one is IEBC, the debate that has just ensued on this floor. And I wish Senator Wamatangi had bothered to read that Article 89+10 on what it says, what options are available to Kenyans. It is only after the commission has made a decision. You know, the biggest and the most absurd thing about this proposal and schedule, Madam Speaker, is that now, thanks to this misadventure, you're going to have one constitution that treats the same issue differently. That you have 290 constituencies where IBC has been granted the proper mandate and authority on where to place them, how to name them, and all those other details as Kenyans desired, and an extra 70 that can only be domiciled in a particular county. How absurd can that be, Madam Speaker? That will be unfortunate if you have such a constitution. If you think even about the judiciary, you all know, because you are currently trying to recruit the Chief Justice. Look at the challenges that we have in our judiciary, Madam Speaker. Kenyans are speaking. Kenyans are observing. We may not be able to say it loudly, but even look at the current composition of our JSC and the decisions that they've been able to give us. Is that how to build a republic? Aren't we setting up this country for failure? Because it will reach a time where Kenyans will look and say, if in this country you don't stand a chance if you come from a particular regional tribe, then we'd rather divide this country so that those who feel that it only belongs to them and it's their privilege and right or birthright to serve in certain constitutional offices are allowed to enjoy their part, and those of us that are considered to be lesser Kenyans can have a different country. That is by and large. If you read clause 44 of this particular bill, and Senator
Honorable Senators, kindly consult in low volumes, because some of us are interested in hearing the debate going on.
Thank Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was referring to clause 44 of this particular bill with regards to this ombudsman. That if you read part 4 of that, on part of the duties that the ombudsman is supposed to partake, is that actually they are going to recommend the actions to be taken by JSC. Let us not reduce this to be a technical thing or something that can be plucked out of the moon. What do you mean when you say somebody is going to recommend an action? It means the hands of JSC are tied. If you are told sack a judge, you will sack. There's nothing else left for you to do, even if you pick an independent JSC. Therefore, the office of the ombudsman, as presently created, is a threat to the independence of our judiciary. And what makes it even more tragic, Madam Speaker, is the fact that this ombudsman is nominated by a president. You do know that part of the reason why we still are surviving as a republic in this country is because of the actions of our judiciary. Especially in these last 2 or 3 years, when we haven't had a functional opposition in the country. The people that have kept the interest and the rights of Kenyans to be considered has only been the judiciary. Now imagine if a judge is presented by somebody whose rights have been violated by the state, and they know that there is a gentleman or a lady known as the office of the ombudsman appointed by the president, who's only awaiting for him to rule against the decision of the executive. Will that judge have the free rein to make a decision that will protect our rights? My dear brothers and sisters who sit in parliament, please do not give Kenyans poison when you have the chance and the opportunity to stop it from happening. Some of them may be ignorant, they may not have the power to understand some of these things, but they have given you a responsibility. That's why you held a Quran or a Bible and said you will defend and protect this constitution. Part of defending a constitution is keeping it alive and ensuring that it is not tampered with in the way that is being presently proposed before us. Don't allow your citizens, the people who woke up early in the morning to go and vote for you, to be in a situation where they will not have a free reigning judiciary. Madam Speaker, you do know that actually in the existence of a state, and all scholars that have taken time to study how a state functions, this state of tension between parliament or the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive is actually one of the tenets that are so critical to the proper functioning of a state. Because if you grant one arm of government the power to load it over and determine the fate of the rest, they will completely wind up the rest of the institution, just like what has happened to parliament. It's not an issue that I want to get into of the challenges that we have faced. Think about even something so, one of the products of this constitution like the SRC, Madam Speaker. It is now proposed in this particular bill that instead of the nomination that Senate does on behalf of counties, that Parliament does on behalf of the people of Kenya, that KOTU, so for example, and I wish Mzee Atwoli, somebody had educated him to know that the powers of KOTU to nominate someone to SRC have been taken away. And the rest, you know, that's why I'm saying, don't take advantage of ignorant Kenyans like Atwoli. Let them understand what this constitution and amendment bill is doing. Because, Madam Speaker, if you say that you are granting the president the power to nominate 7 commissioners to SRC, what are you saying to the rest? Tulisema tuache kusumbuana.
Senator Shionga, what is your point of order?
Madam Speaker, I'm standing on point of order. Just to let Honorable Senator Cheriot that Mr. Atwoli is not ignorant, but he's just a Kenyan who is supposed to be educated with somebody like you or be taught, but he's not ignorant. This man has done a lot. Please ask for apology. Thank you.
I'm glad she's right. Actually, she said he's supposed to be so educated. So I agree. She actually agrees with me. So, Madam Speaker, that is with regards to SRC. That now the president will have the free, actually this is the proper return to imperial presidency that Kenyans avoided. Because if as a president you can determine the salaries of teachers, doctors, parliamentarians, by simply nominating 7 of your cronies to SRC and tell them, I don't like this parliamentarian, pay them peanuts, what will you do? What will be our point in recourse? Madam Speaker, I serve in a constitutional commission. You know that I represent you in PSC. Any proper thinking of how, for example, to strengthen our independent institutions, if I was asked as Senator Aaron Cheruiyot to propose a way and means we can, ways and means of strengthening our independent institutions, then one of the things that I will propose is that let it be determined in our constitution what percentage of budget each of our independent constitutions are supposed to have. Because, for example, the reason why PSC survives is because we have got members of the National Assembly. Therefore, it is within our right. But I sympathize with institutions like JSC. Every time you meet them, they ask you, surely, are you guys not mindful of the fact of that Kenyans need access to justice? When we think about our police, for example, you know, we criticize this IG Mutiambai and the previous ones. But I know for the National Police Service Commission, for example, to function independently, all it will take is for them to have their own independent vote. How do you expect him to disagree with the PS and the CS for Interior when tomorrow morning he has to call them to ask for a budget line? It's not possible. It's the old English adage, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Therefore, if we want to strengthen our independent institutions, Madam Speaker, take an example of even Kenya National Human Rights Commission. Are you aware, Madam Speaker, that for the last 5 years, the only budgetary support they've received from the Parliament is exchequer to pay salaries, not a single shilling to do anything else, not to undertake any particular project. Then somebody says, you know, honestly, so if we want to strengthen this independent institution, this is not the way to proceed. Finally, Madam Speaker, because I know my time is on the diminished role of the Senate. This is where it gets interesting. I really want to meet the senators that will want to tell us that we passed this bill as it is, yet the true import of this bill as presently constituted, if you are not granted the chance, is as equivalent as actually sacking yourself. You not have any duty. It is as sad a proposal as to the fact that this constitution now makes it mandatory that the only people governors are going to be accountable to are the county assembly. So what will you be doing in this house? Why would you want to be a senator? Honestly, Madam Speaker, you know, even our proposal, Madam Speaker, on the very important role for 10 weeks, Madam Speaker, Senate captured the imagination of Kenya. Senate brought this country to a standstill because we stood firm and we said, Kenya, it's the territory and its people. And we ensured that we gave the Republic a formula. We gave the country a formula that ensures there is equity, that ensures that every child across this country gets good and services from their counties without being prejudiced because of where they belong or any other things. But the proposal that is in this particular bill, which takes away all that fight that we did for 10 weeks, including the arrest and all the things that we said, includes in Article 50N, Madam Speaker, where it declares that the per capita giftings on any person should not be more than 3 times. If you apply that formula, for example, Madam Speaker, in this current division of revenue, close to 7 counties are actually going to be wound up because they will not be economically viable. And in fact, Madam Speaker, let me shock you. If you use a spreadsheet, for those of you that know, that are tech savvy and know how to use an Excel sheet, this thing is unachievable. It's not possible. It gives you a margin of error of 0 because every time you reduce, say for example, if you use the current formula, where Nairobi gets about 4,700 as a per capita distribution and Lamu gets 21,000. If you reduce Lamu's from 21 to 12,000 and you increase on the other one, then it tinkers and affects the final variation. Therefore, this proposal...
Honourable Senator, your time is up.
Is not possible.
It's exactly 12:30, and we will give the... When we reconvene at 2:30, we will give the first opportunity to Senator... I think you are through, you're not... You can continue with the 2 minutes when we reconvene. Because the time is, you know, yes, we will give you the 2 minutes. No point of order. Just let's listen, members. It's good to behave in an orderly manner. What I'm saying, I will give you the 2 minutes when we reconvene. I should have given it to you, but everybody is up in arms. Secondly, when we reconvene, give me time. When we reconvene, we will give the first opportunity. After you will give first opportunity to Enoch Wambua, because there was a problem with the system here. The rest will follow. You follow it to the letter. Members, honorable members, honorable senators. It is now 12:31 p.m. Time to interrupt the business of the Senate. The House therefore stands adjourned until today, 29th April 2021 at 2:30 p.m.